listening to You Can Fix That in Post with Elise, Simon, and Dave, and this is Elise's topic.
Yep. I wanted to talk about the movies we grew up with. So this is specifically for us because we are millennials, I suppose you would call us. The movies we grew up with were the films of the late 80s and the early 90s. So.
And why did you choose this?
I like kids' films, generally speaking. Like, I think Disney and Pixar, particularly in the last sort of 10 years, have really done some impressive things with kids' movies. But the films we grew up with were very different. They were largely live action. And I think they were darker. I think they pushed the envelope as far as having challenging stuff on the screen in a way that appealed to kids, but it appealed to adults as well. Like, they didn't dumb down movies. They didn't sugarcoat anything. Specifically, the high fantasy kind of films I think were a lot darker.
So, I guess what I think in terms of those kinds of, that time period of filmmaking, I don't know whether or not they're just darker because when we rewatch them, we notice the darkness because we appreciate them on a different level. Like, I don't know whether or not if I sat down and watched the crap that they're making now for kids' movies, whether or not I'd go, oh, there's actually some stuff for adults that the kids aren't picking up on. But I don't really know, like, what are the kids' films that aren't computer generated? Like, what are the ones that...
There's not a lot anymore, really, is there? That's not animated and computer, like, done in a computer, that's getting released now that you would call a family film. Do you think?
I just don't think they're on our radar. I think that would have to be being made.
I can't even name any off the top of my head that have come out in the last 5 years of kids' films
that aren't
animated. I mean, this wasn't what we intended when we sat down to talk about kids' movies. Like, we were going to specifically talk about kids' movies from the 80s. But yeah, I'm drawing an utter blank for a non-animated film.
Well, okay, there are some things like the new Jumanji. Things like
See, I wouldn't have
Goosebumps.
called that a specifically kids film in the way that the first one was.
See, here's my thing. I would look at that and go, no, it is a kids film, but we're appreciating it on an adult level, but the kids are still, like, this is my point, I guess, that if you look at something like Goosebumps, maybe the adults are appreciating it because of Jack Black and because of subtle innuendos.
Of having grown up with the books as well.
Not even that. Like, there'd be films where you would go to the cinema and you'd have to put up with watching it because your kids are watching it. And there'd be little jokes that we would get as adults that they wouldn't get. I think that might be the same thing as the kids' films back then. We might be appreciating them on an adult level.
Right.
But the question is, are we appreciating them on an adult level when we rewatch them? Or are they just really good kids' films? Or are we just romanticizing the idea of what they were?
I think there is a level that we are romanticizing them because it's the nostalgia factor. It's the love we have for that time and place, and being a child then, like, I mean, the three of us had relatively happy childhoods, but I suppose there are certainly people that had non-happy childhoods that may not be romanticizing it the way we are, but the time and place was a happy, carefree time for us, and those films bring back those feelings for us, having grown up with them. But having said that, I think those films largely do stand up. Like, they're still considered good films, the ones that we are specifically referring to.
Yeah.
Films like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal
I just made a very hideous kind of face as if to say,
it scared the crap out of me.
Um,
But yeah, Home Alone, Hook, Mrs. Doubtfire, they're still considered
oh yeah, like
great films.
yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at in the most roundabout kind of way is that there are still kids' films that are made that include actors, like your Power Rangers
Yeah.
movie, your crap like High School
I don't think
Musical
the
crap.
Power Rangers movie is going to be thought of in 20, 25 years' time the way that some of these films are.
But here's the problem with that: the people who are watching that film now will be the ones in power, the ones who are adults going, oh, I remember that. That was great. And if they watch it and if they think it holds up, well, then they're just the same as what we are.
True.
Like, at the moment, we're like, oh, we're this sophisticated mid-30s kind of thing going, oh, those things like, say, the Sandlot kids or the Little Rascals, weren't they amazing? They're a lot better than the crap they're churning out these days. That Goosebumps movie, that was terrible, But in, say, 15 years' time, the kids who saw that become adults and go, you know what? It does hold up.
It was
Maybe
a time and place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the idea of romanticizing stuff, they like to milk the cash cow. Like,
Oh, yeah. There's always, like, for example, Home Alone. It had the second film, which had the original cast. It had Macaulay Culkin. It had
Joe Pesci,
the guy,
Daniel
the
Stern,
parents were the same.
John Hurt.
That's who I'm thinking of. And it was reprising the same roles.
Yeah.
Whereas then they went, okay, so we can use the name Home Alone and we can continue making films. And so they had recast pretty much the entire cast, I think it is. I don't think there's anyone returning
to
their roles.
In that version, no, there isn't. But, I mean, also, we can say that's kind of milking a cash cow, but in a lot of ways, what were they going to do? It's like, well, Macaulay Culkin, by the time we got around to it, he was coked out as shit.
And
he was,
on drugs.
Like,
yeah.
I get that they're cashing in on the name, and I guess if there's a massive gap between when they did it, then it makes sense. But then there's, like, films like Land Before Time, where it's just like...
Yeah, the animated ones, it's a different beast, isn't it?
Yeah, they just release them. Like, even now, when they're the computer-generated stuff, it's like, oh, there's Shrek 1, and there's Shrek 2, and there's Shrek...
How many Cars movies is there now?
And now it's like, oh, deck the halls with Shrek and crap, and it's just every time you go to a different store, there's just like, Shrek does a poo, or Kung Fu Panda 50. This time, they're getting Chinese food or something. Like, I think
Mike Myers hasn't done any work on those films since about the third one, I think.
Probably.
They've just gotten some poor schmuck who's getting paid, a 20th of what he was.
Yeah.
To do the Scottish accent.
But maybe these films are holding up. Maybe they will hold up. Maybe the kids that are being born now will watch Home Alone, grow up with Home Alone, and then 20 years from now they'll still talk about it.
We're all having kids now, and we're exposing our kids to these films like, this was a great movie, I loved this movie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that my parents put on that were like, we watched this when we were kids and we loved it, apart from like some Laurel and Hardy stuff that my dad had on old VHS. He was like, oh, you should watch this, and I'm watching it going, I don't understand this, Dad.
I think your dad's got some issues. But for me, my mum would have been exposed to things like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, Oliver, and those old school Disney cartoons.
The old musicals and things like that.
Yeah, and, Disney that we think aren't old but are. Like, there are a whole bunch of Disney films where it's like, what? It was made...
It was made in the 50s? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they probably think, oh, they were good for me when I was a kid. And, like, the classic example is The Wizard of Oz. Made in, like,
That's
1939.
Right. Yeah.
Or even if you went, okay, Willy Wonka was, like, what, 1971? Well, how old would my mum would have been? About 16 when that came out. Maybe she went, oh, this was fun when I was a teenager. My kids will watch it and like it.
Yeah.
But it's probably not a huge amount like we.
No, nowhere near the volume that we have.
And
yeah.
I think part of that, and this is going to sound really weird, is the fact that our parents didn't have VCRs.
True. Yeah.
And So
if they were going to a film, they'd actually have to go out
Yeah.
to a film. Yeah.
and
Whereas we can whack on Netflix now and have access
Yeah.
to thousands of films.
well, beyond that, we had DVDs, we had VHS. We could go to a video store and rent out something and watch it in the privacy of our own home. They had the cinema, or they had what was on TV. So it's not like they could just kind of view their lives away and just have clock up a million hours of stuff.
Yeah.
So the things that stood up for them are things that must have been brilliant, that they could rewatch a million times, that would be on TV a million times, like The Wizard of Oz, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
So, in talking about Home Alone, I believe this is Dave's childhood film, or he likes the childhood film. Dave sometimes watches films.
I do. I have watched a film from time to time. I do remember watching that as a kid. It would come on every year or whatever on TV.
Yeah, usually around Christmas.
Yeah. Because were they all Christmas ones, or one of them was a Christmas one, or
The first two
Were definitely
Christmas
Christmas.
films. Yeah. I put it on every Christmas Eve. My brother and I watch it, and we know the whole thing by heart by now.
Right.
So
Nice. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. Just I guess that he just made all these traps and kicked ass and yeah.
it was that level of kid violence that was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things whereby, I don't know, how do you...
He's upping the bad guys. Like, he's smarter than the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe in, like, a Trump America, it's like the kid just goes to his parents' gun safe, types in the birthday, and then just
Oh my
shoots the bad guys, and you go, ooh.
He has a BB gun. He has a BB gun.
Oh, yeah, that's why I said in Trump's America, like, these days, could you, like, what would that be like? Would that be fighting?
The film would be over really quickly.
Or maybe it'd be like drones
Also, he'd pick up
chasing
his
them.
phone and he'd ring his mum
Yeah.
and say,
Yeah,
"Hey, bitch, you got on the plane and you left me behind."
Yeah, and they'll be like, just
Facebook
stay there.
updates.
Yeah,
Still
yeah.
alive.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very different. It's like watching Stranger Things now, where they're like the kids are on their bikes and they're riding around, and you just think all those mums would have had like a GPS on their kid. They'd be tracking them on their mobile device. It just wouldn't happen.
so maybe there'll be a whole bunch of kids' films that just don't,
Just
Stay
can't get done.
relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it'll be like, yep, all the trouble they could have got in, it was mainly just doing a sex tape and then posting it online.
Yep. Was like sending your boyfriend some nudes and then he sent it to all of his football player friends and
Yeah.
yeah. That's the way I think the 80s is having this big like nostalgia resurgence because there was that freedom that you walked out of the house and your parents had no idea what you were
Yeah.
doing. It's like the helicopter parenting was not a thing
Yeah.
like it is now.
But also, I guess, the people who are watching movies and TV shows in bulk are the people who grew up in that time period. So I don't know whether or not the kids who are around these days will be watching films in which they're watching kids play on their smartphones.
Well, that's it, yeah.
And they'll be going, look at him! He's
Oh,
playing Candy Crush!
was
That's
his-
amazing! I remember Candy
The
Crush!
best day ever. I like
Oh,
crushed that
look.
high score.
Yeah. Maybe.
Mm.
That'll be a sad future. So, let's talk about Home Alone. Like, let's talk about what it actually is. Like, it has some depth to it. Like, you've got the guy who's salting the sidewalks who
Yeah.
isn't seeing I think it's his son.
He's,
and-
falling out with his son. And he has to go to see his granddaughter. He goes to church to see her singing in the choir.
Yeah.
And, Macaulay Culkin got a jumper with a big bird on it.
Yeah. And there's people in it. Like, there's his younger brother in it who's like full go easy on the Pepsi because he keeps wetting the bed. That's Kieran Culkin, who will later go on to, what is it? Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I feel like a million other things. But there's a million Culkins. They just kept on cloning them.
Yeah.
The
They
reality
kept crawling
is,
out of the woodwork.
they should have just, instead of doing Home Alone 3 with that different actor, that kid from One Fine Day, they should have got the next stage of Culkin to play that role.
That's a good point.
Like, they just had so many Culkins, it could have just been like, oh, it's this Culkin. He's
It's
now.
Fuller. It's Fuller as Home Alone this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they could have just, or they could have even just like rewound and just gone, oh no, it's still him. He just looks slightly different now.
Yeah. I mean, this is it. So you've got the third one, which is there's 4 bad guys instead of 2, and they're not Marv and the other guy. So Marv is Daniel Stern, who's the voice in Wonder Years and Dilbert and all the other stuff. And then Joe Pesci is, I don't want to say Merle. That seems wrong. Marv and Merle.
Oh my gosh.
But, I mean, here's the thing. In 4, there's 4 different bad guys, which is too many. It's a different kid. It's different parents. Same character names. 4th, it's a totally different kid and character names and all that stuff. Actually, there's one where I know Daniel Stern just read the script and went, "This is shit. I'm not reprising my role." And the person they get to play that role is French Stewart.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing is, French Stewart has just kind of cornered the market on the idea of, if we can't get the original, we'll get him.
We'll just get him.
Which is like Inspector Gadget 2. So, yeah, Joe Pesci is Harry.
Thank you, IMDb.
Yep. But I know for a fact that Daniel Stern said that he wouldn't do that, the one where they bring back that character as the bad guy, because he said it was that crap. And he's like...
Yeah, I mean, and it's a character he's created. He should have a certain amount of control over that. Yeah, and then, you know, you shouldn't destroy someone's legacy of a beloved character just because it's gonna earn a bit of money.
Yeah. So 5. That is actually, to be perfectly honest...
Is there 5?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Pretty sure there's 5. I think Daniel Stern is in the 5th.
Oh, jeez.
The Holiday Heist.
It came out in 2012.
Yeah. It's like Air
What?
Bud. There's 50 of them. There's a million
What?
Shreks.
I did not even know this existed. That is insane.
Problem Child 50. I know of at least 3 Problem Childs, though they all had the same kid, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's problematic.
Problematic Problem Child. Okay, so beyond the fact of making a million sequels for something that's great, what are the other films that will stand up, do you think?
I think as far as franchises go, we've got The Mighty Ducks, originally titled Champions, which I found out very recently. I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah.
That was a franchise. How many of those was there?
Oh, only 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And,
they kept all of their main cast, didn't they?
well, yes and no. So in the second one, Emilio comes back, even though he's not... yeah, second one is Emilio and it's the same cast. And then third one, Emilio comes back for like a cameo when they
Right.
try to kick them out of the high school, and he comes in as the lawyer and goes, "No, you can't do that because of all these legal words." And they all go, "Quack, quack," and that's the end.
Yeah.
But
They all just quack and that's the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it goes. Flying V.
Flying V. And the best part of number 2 is when they kind of just go Flying V and they just push them over. Just like, this is awesome.
So.
But, I mean, there's the other quality of things like, you know, the puppets of Jim Henson.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Dead Eyes thing in Dark Crystal, it's creepy. But
Yeah, I mean...
that really pushed the envelope as far as, like, a children's film.
Yeah,
There's
it's
some dark themes there.
in the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, like the whole genocide thing, and then...
The vulture things were scary as shit.
The Skeksis. Yeah.
It's like Return to Oz, if you've ever seen that. Return to Oz is a frightening kids' film. The fact that it's made, like, I don't know, 40 to 50 years after The Wizard of Oz, it scared the crap out of me. The Wheelers, there's electroshock therapy, people's heads get removed. But, I mean, beyond that, Jim Henson did The Storyteller, he did The Muppets, he did Labyrinth.
Sesame Street.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Sesame Street person, to be honest. I can only appreciate that on a level of a kid's thing. I don't watch it and go, "Oh, there's something for adults too."
No, that's purely children's entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While I think,
educational.
yeah,
Yeah.
while Muppets had something a little bit for adults, and things like Labyrinth you can definitely appreciate as an adult. Same with Storyteller. And nowadays you can go, oh, Labyrinth, David.
David Bowie's tight pants.
Yeah, and the fact that he's dead now, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
legacy of his work.
Yeah.
And all the soundtrack for it, and yeah. And I think this is going to sound really bad. The reason why some things like that wouldn't exist now is because they wouldn't be doing the puppets.
No. It would
It'd
just be
CG.
animated. Yeah. Because it would have cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It would have taken a really long time.
Mm.
And it's just skills that don't necessarily exist anymore.
Mm.
Like, there was a Muppet movie, 5 years ago?
Mm.
And I don't think it did big money, did it?
Oh, the first Muppet movie did. I mean, it won Best Oscar for that original song because of the guy from the Flight of the Conchords wrote it, and it was
Right.
Jason Segel wrote it as well. The sequel to that, which had Ricky Gervais, I don't think it did great money, but it still exists. But I mean, the thing is, they're the Muppets. The puppets are still
It's-
around.
Yeah, it's trading on nostalgia again.
Yeah, and it's not like it's going to cost a lot of money to make a Kermit, but if you said, I need to make a huge Ludo or a very detailed Sir Didymus or, you know, a Hoggle, you'd be like, yep, that's going to cost a lot of money with all the latex and all that stuff. We'll just make it with the computer. And you'd go, yeah, but it's not the same.
No.
It's like E.T. Would we get an E.T.? If someone had destroyed the E.T. puppet, would we have a digital E.T.?
It's like digital Yoda.
Well, that's the
People,
thing.
rejected it. Ultimately, rejected it.
Well, the thing was, I think people were really weirded out by Digital Yoda and Phantom Menace. And then when he kicks the crap out of Count Dooku in, Attack of the Clones,
Yeah.
everyone loves it because they're just like, fuck me, I haven't seen Yoda ever use a lightsaber. Look at the guy jump around.
Yeah, which would not have been possible with a puppet.
Yeah. However, in seeing The Last Jedi, where Yoda comes back and he's like the projection, it's a puppet again.
Yeah,
And it's friggin' amazing.
yeah.
And yeah, I maybe that's a sign of
It's
good
because
things.
I think it is based heavily on people being so horrified by digital Yoda and just going, no, we don't accept this. This
Or
is
going,
just not right.
If Yoda, the character, is not beating the shit out of people, we can use a
He
puppet.
needs a puppet. Yeah.
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 Because it was like one of the best things out of that entire movie. I was just like, what?
Really?
It's
yeah.
a puppet? This is awesome. Yeah. But, I mean, okay, beyond Labyrinth, it's the fact that David Bowie did the songs.
Yeah.
You've got, like...
And it's the classic hero journey as well. Everyone likes a hero journey. Bad parenting of putting an infant child in the care of, what is she, 14?
She's older than 14.
Really? I don't know. How old was she? She maybe
How
16?
is that bad parenting?
I don't know. It just seems questionable.
I think that's probably the most normal thing about the entire film.
It's like an infant child. It's got to be like less than a year old, and it's in the care
It's
of...
probably a year old.
a
I mean, for
teenage
one
girl.
thing, the child can walk. We know it walks. We've seen it walk.
Does it walk?
It crawls for a lot, but we see it walk. I'm pretty sure we see it walk in
Oh,
that weird
okay.
kind of...
Well, it's about a year old then.
Okay, so a 1-year-old child, and I think she's... I don't know the age of what she's trying to play, but I would have thought Jennifer Connelly would have been at least 16 in that.
Oh, I don't know. I thought she was younger than that. Anyway, that aside, it's got the high fantasy, the whole ballroom scene where she's in the pretty dress. So,
Yeah.
it's appealing. It's appealing to both genders as well, because it's got the girly prettiness, but it's also got like the scary stuff as well.
Yeah.
So I think it was a mass appeal. David Bowie would have brought in an audience as well. It was sort of peak crazy David Bowie.
Well, I think he would have brought in an audience of adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're actually really spot on, I think, with the gender thing, because there's a lot of films that do well based on having and catering to both genders of kids.
Yeah.
Like when you
Goonies.
look at Goonies, like something like The Mighty Ducks, where it's like it's a mixed team.
It's a mixed team. Yeah. That's, where like The Sandlot was very much
all
for the boys.
Yeah.
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 We're gonna have to.
And
Google how
Dave,
old
I
Jennifer
thought
Connelly
was on the Jennifer Connelly trail. Has he got an answer
Do you
for
have an
us?
answer?
I have not, no. All I got was a bunch of quotes from her.
Okay.
Well,
that's
it's
alright.
very helpful.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the end.
Okay, so we should put a wager on this. If Jennifer Connelly is 16 when she made that, then you owe me a pizza.
It's not about how old the actress was. It's about how old the character's supposed to be, though.
Yeah, but if we don't actually find out her age in the film, which they never go, "You're 16, dear," then
I'm gonna rewatch it tonight, and I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna see if they actually do state.
they
how
never
old
mention
she was.
her age in that film.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty 100% sure.
You're pretty 100%.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that means she's 15.
1970,
Yeah.
December 12.
And the movie was made in 86. Probably
So-
before December 12th.
Not 16. It would have been made at least a year ahead.
Okay,
Really, like,
well, not
15.
14. A 15-year-old and 1-year-old, I got no problems with that. Especially during the 80s. In the 80s.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Kids just fend for themselves in the 80s.
Maybe with the drone-watching parents of these days, they'd go, a 15-year-old and 1-year-old? That's wrong. Unless we can get them on the, cam.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it would have been okay. See, a 15-year-old... Oh, it says there, 16-year-old girl. Fine.
Oh!
16-year-old
And
character.
there we go!
Damn it! Damn it!
I'm so correct!
Damn it!
Yeah, I got no problem with that whatsoever. I mean,
so
the fact
annoyed
that
by that.
the start of that is, we'd like it if you went on dates, that kind of stuff.
Oh, she's a very immature 16-year-old. She's in the park, doing her whole,
Oh, she's doing drama.
she's doing
Leave her
drama in the
alone.
park
Yeah.
on her own in a dress.
The whole thing is these days she'd be a goth.
True. Well, emo. Yeah.
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 Depends on whether or not she likes herself.
Because
Whether
she
or not
still
she's
has
a
all the
goth or an
toys
emo.
and stuff. That's the whole
Yeah.
thing about... It's the whole coming of age.
I know,
you have to
grown
grow
men
up.
with toys.
It's your bear. Remember your bear.
Yeah. But you're right. It does look awesome in terms of beyond the puppets. The ball looks great. The staircase stuff looks
And
great.
it's creepy.
The labyrinth itself is amazing. You kind of go, how much money would this cost these days to make?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
They would just digitally make the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But-
just don't get stuff like that anymore.
I mean, Jim Henson was where it was at, though, if you think about it. When he was doing the puppets, your Yodas and your storytellers, your Labyrinth, your Dark Crystal, your Muppets, and Sesame Street. Do we even have that these days? He's been
A
dead.
go-to kind of person for...
Well, someone who has that own kind of weird creativity that's different, where you just go, hey, it's this guy who's
It's got his, definitive stamp on it.
Yeah. For
Ugh.
kids stuff.
For
No.
kids stuff, no. I mean, Pixar is... It's a production house or whatever you would call
Yeah,
it, but
yeah.
that has its own stamp on it. You can look at a film and go, that's a Pixar film,
Yeah.
but it's not a single person. It's a lot of people together.
To some extent, I'd also argue that if it didn't say Pixar at the front, there'd be a whole bunch of animated stuff these days that you could kind of just go, is it a Pixar?
What's it called?
Use your words.
Oh my God, I'm trying to think of it. It's
Just tell us
the other big animation house that does a lot of
DreamWorks.
stuff. DreamWorks.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the thing with the fishing rod. What is it?
Well, I mean,
DreamWorks has a lot of films that I don't think they're at the same standard though.
yeah, but if someone said to me at the start of Shrek they put the Pixar thing, I'd go, okay, I can kind of see that.
Oh really? I think it's a very different.
It might have a different kind
It's
of...
a different flavor.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a different flavor, but I don't think it's so...
Are you sobbing at the end of the film? That's how you know it's a Pixar movie.
Oh, there are DreamWorks films where at least I'm somewhat moist.
Different thing altogether.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but Pixar has that whole, it's like the emotional gut punch, usually around the 2/3 mark, where you just why am I at this movie? I'm just crying hysterically.
I think there is a bunch of films that when they try to make them these days, using the old technology, suck. I think of, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, and you're just like, what? The first two were amazing. Did Rick Moranis just need a paycheck? And to be perfectly honest, he'd probably go, yeah, I did.
He maybe did. Yeah, well, he quit the whole
Acting
Hollywood thing, yeah.
Okay, so we've gone through the Jim Henson, and we've gone through the awesome Christmas movie that is Home Alone Part 1 and or 2. I actually think 2 is almost as good. It's like
Yeah.
so many sequels aren't as good, but you look at that and you go Brenda Fricker with the bird shit on her in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The whole, they had the house that's half torn down.
Yeah.
It's, you think, like, which one's the one where they fall through the hole in the floor?
Yeah.
That must be the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just think, what kind of injuries did they sustain? That will tell me which film it was.
I think there is a little bit of that idea of, part of the reason why Home Alone was so good was because we get to beat the crap out of these guys.
Yeah.
How about we set it in a place where we can make the booby traps that much more messed up?
Yeah.
And that's why number 2, gets a little bit more physical and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they had the sentimental thing with Brenda Fricker, like the old man in the first. But in number 3, I don't think they even attempted to make a character which was supposed to have any kind of depth.
Well, it had moved beyond that then. It was just like, let's just up the ante and see if we can just beat the crap out of more people.
Yeah. And then
Who
eventually...
cares about the emotional
Yeah.
side of it? They don't need any character growth. Who cares?
And now the producers make Saw.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. That's not true. I was just thinking that would be a natural
A
evolution.
natural progression.
Yeah, yeah.
It would, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to say now is we have listed a couple of the kids' films at the start of this. Talk to us on Facebook. This is going to be one that's going to have multiple parts because you got to talk about Goonies, you got to talk about Monster Squad, you got to talk about Adventures in Babysitting, you got to talk about Matilda, you got to talk about a million different things and whether or not they hold up, and I think they all do. But, I could be wrong. So...
Which ones are worth deep diving on?
And which ones have you recently revisited and gone, oh, did you ever notice this was in it and it's really creepy? And did you realize that guy was a pedophile?
Have you seen The Dark Crystal? Did it scar you for life?
Yeah. I think there could be a class action lawsuit against Dark Crystal.
It's messed up.
Yeah, and
the dead eyes on those things and the
I
little
also
hands
think
and
there's probably a test whether or not a child grew up to be a serial killer as to whether or not they liked Dark Crystal.
like The Dark Crystal as a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I should be worried about my partner, shouldn't I? Because he loved that movie as a kid. He'd been trying to get me to watch it for ages.
Yes, you should worry
I should
about
be
him.
worried.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back. Whose turn is it next time? Oh my gosh. Is it Dave? Are we back up to you?
Yeah.
Be afraid.
Oh my god. So
Yeah.
maybe some video game movies or something.
Yeah.
Let's really push the envelope.
Talk about films that don't hold up.
There's a whole back catalogue there we can get into.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you next time. You've been listening to You Can Fix That in Post.